You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in the space every week. Got an exciting episode for everybody this week. Ivan, let's get started.
Hi, I'm Ivan Zach, and I'm happy to introduce you guys to Rivers Morrell. We're going to talk about marketing automation. And I want to be specific because when people are talking about marketing, they envision pamphlets, maybe pens, maybe your sign of the clinic. We're going to talk about the science of digitalizing. How do you attract customers, follow them, and bring them back to your business, specific to veterinary clinics. So Rivers is the CEO of Vet Marketing Pro. He also is the owner and investor of EasyVet franchise veterinary clinics in Dallas region. He is also a functional COO of EasyVet for the franchise business. He holds a degree of Bachelor in Political Sciences and Government from the University of California, San Diego. On the personal side of things, he previously found a mobile app platform in a restaurant space that culminated in a platform deal with Google. He loves technology and data and how it automates our lives and helps us make better decisions. He also wrote a book, Google My Business for Veterinarians, which we will attach a link to. And he is married to his wife, Rita, who is the president of Vet Marketing Pro. For 5 years, they've been married, and they have 10 months old boy named Rivers, just like I have a son named Ivan. So, and they live in Knoxville, Tennessee. Welcome, Rivers, to the show. I am super excited because I am sort of a marketing geek, and I always listen and search for new things that happen. And it drives me crazy when people say, I know about marketing, and they mean these just, I printed pamphlets, we put the ad in the yellow pages. I hope that doesn't happen anymore. And let's talk about this. So there, you never know with the vets. So there is tons of tools out there. They're super sophisticated, and vets have no idea about them. When you're talking to them, they just think about, oh, you're going to build my website, and I want these pictures and those pictures, and they don't understand the whole mechanics and how sophisticated it got, and how you can track people that visited your website, follow them on multiple platforms, return them if you want them, and then track whether they return or not. So why don't we open up with sort of what are the basic conversations you're having with the vets to get them a layer deeper beyond understanding that you're building websites?
So for me, I kind of find vets are kind of in two different categories. One category is, I call it, they've seen the light, and the other is they haven't. What I mean by that is I want vets to understand that when they're spending money on marketing, they're spending money. Like if they spend $1,000, and if I can show them that $1,000 brings in 20 clients, and the cost to bring them in was $50 a piece, I want them to have that aha moment where they say, oh my gosh, my APC, my average patient cost is $220. Every time I spend $50, I get $220. I want them to stop looking at it that they're spending $1,000 and start saying, how can I buy more of that ratio right there? Every $50 I spend, I'm getting a full patient charge. So I'm really trying to get people to have that aha understanding right there, that's really what we're trying to get down to, is figuring out what is it costing us to get a client when we are doing some marketing or advertising. That's the big aha moment for me with vets when I'm talking to them.
So I'm glad that you mentioned the customer acquisition cost. That's the most sort of common term that all the startups will use when they start measuring their marketing efforts in the SaaS companies. And technically, when veterinarians look at the spend, even what you said, you spend that much money on the campaign, and then after that, you bring a client whose average sort of transaction cost. But if you think about the SaaS model in the software, you actually measure your customer acquisition cost against the lifetime value of the customer. So it's actually not one visit, but multiple. And if you think about the lifetime value of the customer, it's the patient that comes back once, twice a year and leaves, average of $160 over 10 years. It's a completely different cost. So it's a fraction of what they bring you back to the hospital. So looking at marketing as just, a line item on their expenses is probably really wrong. The other funny thing that I find about marketing in clinics, and we've been looking through a lot of acquisitions recently, it's what you find on their marketing spend as actual items. Funding their son's football team, buying t-shirts for everybody. I always talk about it. It's like in the past, or I think that I actually have seen it recently. There's a plane flying with a big sign on it for whatever company they advertise. How do you measure return on that? You can't. So everything what you do right now in marketing, if it's not measured, it's not worth doing. And what you mentioned when we were sort of talking about these things, you mentioned how you can measure the calls against the ads in the Google. Can you expand a little more on that and how that's done?
Yeah. So what we're doing now, and we've kind of, when I got into this space, I tried everything, right? I wanted to figure out what was going to have the most value. At the end of the day, through this process I'm going to describe, we really have honed in on what has the most value in terms of acquiring new clients for the lowest cost. And so really what we'll do is we'll go ahead and set some tracking numbers up. We'll put those tracking numbers on their social media page, on the website, on Google My Business. Google Ads has a call forwarding number where we can put that in. So basically we set these tracking numbers up. This is the heart of what Google is all about. Then what we're able to do is we're able to at least see how many calls that we're getting from each one of these channels. That can be, some people alone can look at that and think there's value there. Ideally, though, what we're trying to figure out is out of the phone calls, who became a client and how much money did it take to get them to become a client? So basically what we're actually doing now is when the phone call comes over, and there's a couple different ways that these are coming through. So potentially through a chat box, and most of the chat boxes we're using, we're able to put the Google forwarding code inside of there so we can track if it's coming that way. And if they come through the chat box and actually book, we actually have added the code all the way through to actually register that as a booking. For phone calls that come through, we build a kind of an intermediator where we can actually an interface where we take the phone number that came in and we ping it against the PIM system. And that ping goes all the time. So it's not just a one-time ping. Every single time we do a call, it calls the PIM system for that phone number and it returns, yes, there was a client appointment. We set up a couple rules, but they'll also tell us their spend. Now, the really crazy thing, though, is that formula stays in place. So as they become clients and they come back in a second time, in a third time, we're just defining the parameter for ROI. So ROI is technically how many times does this phone number come back in and how much do they spend? So there's an ROI that day, but in 6 months later, when they come back in to spend again, that actually goes up. So what we're able to determine by querying that PIM system is we're actually able to say out of these 8 phone calls that came through, only 1 became a client. And to get that 1 client, we spent $51.50. All of this is done in real time through like a program that allows us to read this in real time. And we can look at performance over time. We can see which channels are producing the most. We can, if we have multiple locations, we can look at one and ask, why is the cost per acquisition so high here? Look at another and say, why is it so low? But for the first time, we're really getting some good data back in terms of what is really working in this space and what's not. I worked with a private equity firm where we basically had a little bit of an open road to do a bunch of this testing. They wanted to get to the bottom of what worked and what didn't. And so we set up and we opened up about 10 or 15 channels. We just started with an open slate. We wanted to see, our thesis was, let's try everything and see what works. Then let's go back and pound the numbers and analyze it and come to our best performers. So we did everything from mailers to street team to banners to events to adoption to Yelp to new mover kits. Out of all of those, our top performer hands down was Google across the board. And I mean, the groups that I work with that spend the very most on Google, they have the very most data, which is, I think, really interesting. So the groups that have the most analytics, the most BI, and can determine their ROI and cost per acquisition, they're spending 10 to 20 to 30 times more than anyone else. So I think that's really insightful, right? That the more data that we get in analytics, the more that we can see that relationship between spend and ROI.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, Rivers. So let's expand upon that and dive a little bit deeper. So, XYZ vet clinic calls Vet Marketing Pro, and they're like, I read this book about marketing, and Henry Ford says that half of the money that I spend on marketing, I'm throwing it away. I think his quote was, 50% of my marketing works, I just don't know which half. So we don't live in that world anymore. I think that's what you and Ivan are saying. And so, what does that engagement look like? So they've got a website. It looks nice. They don't spend any advertising on marketing. It's all word of mouth. And last year they bought T-shirts for their son's ball team. So how do you help somebody like that? What's it look like? And what are the tactical marketing steps? What's the advertising look like? And then, be it a perfect client, they do everything that you tell them to do. What are they doing, and how quickly do they see results?
So first, if they do have some of that traditional marketing experience, I do want them to understand one concept first before we start a plan. That concept is this. It's the idea of intent versus non-intent marketing in the space. Here's how it goes. I always ask someone, Shawn, do you have any pets, by the way?
Yes, one Chihuahua.
Are you taking your Chihuahua to the vet today?
Not today, but the dog has been to the vet in the last year, yes.
Okay, well, if I showed you a post on social media today, would you go into the vet today?
No.
Okay, when's if I showed you a billboard?
No.
Or if I stopped by and knocked on your door with a nice little handout?
Maybe, probably not, though.
So that's what we see. Those are all forms of non-intent marketing. You didn't have any intention of going to the vet today. So no matter how much marketing I put in front of you today, you're probably not going to the vet. Furthermore, do you have a vet that you like to use, by the way?
Yeah.
You're probably not even going to come to me when you're ready to go to the vet. You're going to go to the one you like, right?
Yeah.
So you have zero intention of going to the vet today, and you're probably not going to go to me even when you do. So I don't like to focus my energy on that stuff. I like to focus on the other side. The guy that wakes up today and whose pet does need to go to the vet, who gets online and does a search for veterinarian near me. That is someone that actually, they're looking because they don't have a vet. Otherwise, they would have typed the vet's name. And they're looking because they need a vet today. So I want to get in front of that person first. That's my lowest hanging fruit. If there's 20 of those people, I want to get in front of all 20 of them first before I try anything else. I want people to understand that basic concept first. Let's spend our money with the people that are looking first before the people that aren't looking. Now, granted, if I stop by 1,000 doors today, maybe I find one that happened to be going to the vet today, but most likely not, right? So the first thing is let's let someone understand that basic concept right there. Second, I want a foundation in place. The foundation is going to be the website, and the website needs to be set up properly, not really template-y. Needs to have all your proper SEO, your schema, your SEO schema. This is your foundation. It needs to tell your story on why you're a good vet, and it needs to talk about the services that you offer. Once your foundation is in place, for us, if someone is wanting to acquire new clinics, the first conversation we're going to have with them is Google Adwords. For us, we're real different than everyone else. Other companies, let's say you go to and you give them $2,000 for Google AdWords, they're probably only going to spend half of it, right? So with us, we don't do it like that. We take the client, we set up an account on Google in their name, they have access to it, they bill their credit card, and through that account, they can have 100% transparency in the amount that they're spending. Second, we are going to set up some sort of tracking number, a Google forwarding number with Google, so that we can see some level of how well this is performing. Then most likely we'll use some sort of dashboard, like maybe agency analytics that pipes all this together and can give us some real-time readouts. For a single location practice, that is some really good basic foundation marketing, right? They can see the calls that are coming in as a result of their marketing efforts. If they want, they can listen to the calls. This single location practice probably doesn't need to go the step further where we are actually querying back into their PIMS system and finding out, did they become a client? Really what this single location practice can do is listen to the 40 or 50 phone calls and actually see who scheduled appointments. And after about a 30-day analysis, they can have a really good understanding for, are they getting clients? How well is this working? And have a lot of transparency while doing it.
So I have another question on the chatbots. You mentioned them. So this is a fairly new thing, I think, for the clinics. Are they switching the customer service representatives, receptionists, whatever you call them? Are they switching now the habit of having a couple channels, not just the phone, and paying attention to chatbots and booking appointments through that? Is that something that is becoming a common practice?
Yeah, we're seeing that right now, and we have the metrics to support its use case. We're seeing success really, it's crazy. Even back to putting form fills, we're still getting success on those form fills. We're still getting the phone calls, but Chatbox is something that's working really, really well. It seems to me a lot of the millennials, and you look at like the data that Vet Story, and I know you had those guys on, they provide a lot of data about who's using these online bookers. It's real similar to the people that are using these chat boxes. Millennials, younger, technology forward people, they don't even want to get on the phone anymore.
Me neither.
They're doing book by chat right now all day. Yeah.
I don't think I think I'm the first year of millennials. And I think that basically if someone doesn't text me first, I wouldn't pick up the phone. Like this is where it is now. So, or if it's Shawn calling, I just don't pick up at all.
I get a bunch of different numbers now, so it's fine. I just call from a different number. I text first. I'm like, Ivan, it's your friend. And he's like, oh, my friend, my one friend. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, this is such an interesting topic. So, I mean, I've got a strange question, Rivers. So you've come in, you've pitched. I'm now the practice owner of a 5-hospital veterinary practice. And you pitched me, and I like everything that you have to say, but I've been hosed so many damn times from marketing people in the past that I'm quite skeptical. And I say to you, Rivers, everything that you're throwing down makes a ton of sense. I'm open to moving to a new API-driven practice management software so you can have all of the data that you need to show me that I'm getting the ROI. Will you take 50% of my first year's revenue and do my marketing services for me instead of me having to pay for somebody to say they're going to do things and are not going to do them?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So there is a lot of that out there right now, and I've seen a lot of it in the marketing space in general. So really for us, a couple different things to your question. Someone's got multiple locations. They're trying to really figure out, are what we're talking about, is this true? Are other people using it? Is this successfully working? So I typically, if it's a group, I would want someone to talk to some of the other groups that we're working with to understand that this is something that we can do and that we can put into place. Secondly, we don't do any contracts or anything. Everything, the client is going to own everything from day one. They can walk away one day into this and keep everything. We want them to have that level of control. And since everything is going to be in their name, all the accounts, they've got this unprecedented level of transparency so that they can really see what they're doing. Typically through that right there, we're able to really give a new layer of confidence. But the way that we've structured our pricing is we really try to be transparent in our pricing. So we might have a set low monthly fee per location. And as long as you're doing that in the website with us, we do free Google ads. We do the free consulting. We'll help set up Facebook campaigns. So all those other services are just included in a low flat monthly fee. And we find that it just works a lot better like that. There's not like a lot of different bills and a lot of different fee structures. The feedback that we get is great, and the transparency works really well with people.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and I appreciate the transparency in your answer, but I guess I'm just going to take another stab at you again because that's kind of how I am. If this ROI-driven marketing is so powerful, and you seem like you have this end-to-end solution, I guess when I look at your resume and what you're doing, the first thing that I see is, okay, you have this marketing company, and you've decided to invest in a veterinary business, which is really interesting. You've got a franchise now, and you're also the COO of this same franchise. And I'm guessing you're doing all the marketing for it. So I really do see this proven track record. But man, oh man, if there was somebody out there that had a marketing company that says, let me take it on, and I'm going to take a percentage of the revenue that we're going to generate here together. I just wonder how quickly you could build a business like that. And I'm thinking if you had proven tactics to get customers in the door and turn them into clients, I think any vet business on the planet would be just beating down your door to say, if I can give you 100 and you can turn it into $157 every single time, I'd be super jazzed about wanting to work with you for sure. It would be not even a conversation. So just curious if you can expand your thoughts on that and why somebody hasn't done that. If we've got ROI-based marketing, and I know my customer acquisition is X and my overhead is Y, it just seems like a no-brainer business. Now, I mean, I don't understand how to do it, so I'm not going to do it. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, you're right. we're very busy right now. I will tell you that. And we're very selective with who we work with. So a lot of the consolidators out there, they have, everything is so diverse. They use 10 different or 15 different companies. And a lot of times they don't hire someone in marketing that even understands the concepts we're talking about today. I just pass on a lot of those. I'm looking for the all-in, the big win, the people that get it. Usually they're private equity backed. They have some stakeholders that want some serious data. So you're right, though. We do pass up working with some different groups based upon, a variety of different things. For us, we are not going to take any revenue that comes in. We are going to be a flat fee. But you're right. There is, in order for this whole mix to work really well, there has to be us on one side, but there has to be someone on the other side that also understands marketing, and that can kind of help put this thing together. And when that does happen, it works really, really well. It's kind of like, yes.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. And I mean, I'd love to see the data and analytics on those two different approaches. So client X, $2,500 a month flat fee. They've got a bunch of practices. And then client Y, same number of practices. And they're like, let's do it as a fee for service. We'll take 40% of the revenue or 20% of the revenue. It'd be just really interesting to see which one of those approaches would net the marketing company more money. And if there was a true ROI, I think that, there could be another way to go about this business. Like if the data's that good and the returns are that good, let's face it, we're all in this to make money. And it's a really easy concept to get one's head around if it's like, we're going to do this, and every time we do this, it costs you X. Just be interested to see what that would look like.
You know what? It's really interesting. So I'm going to take a bit of a dive on this in the sense that, being able to communicate that essence right there effectively, market that is difficult to do, right? So even I'm a marketing person, I think of two people in the space that could effectively do that. I think of Scott Harper and Jason Warnley from Allied DVM, right? They have the ability to capture that data and to communicate the ROI effectively and, going down that road. That's still something that, we've been on the front side and building it. The back side is, I think, the answer to your question, which is next for us is how do we communicate what we're doing effectively so someone can come in contact with us and can read our data sheet and say, wow, this is what they're doing. Let's move forward, right? So I think that's kind of where things are at, though, is how do we communicate that?
It's really interesting to me because as I listen to this conversation, and I'd like Ivan and you both to comment on this next question. So here we are, data analytics, turning marketing dollars into, having a customer acquisition cost, which is below the lifetime value of the client. Very analytical, very strategic. And I know there's veterinarians that are out there that are head of marketing for their organization that do their social media posts. And they're like, oh, great, another fucking thing that I've got to learn. It sounds like it's even more complicated. And yeah, it's very easy for the consolidator to hire a company, like yours to do this fancy work and to drive an ROI, which is amazing. But how do they compete? How do they even start to get their head around this? What do they do to give themselves a chance to be able to compete with somebody that's got 10 times more money and 10 times more staff to deal with these things that are complicated?
You're right. So I think the level of discussion we're having is not trickling down yet, right? They don't have the staff. They don't have the bandwidth. Sure, private equity comes in and they've got someone at the private equity firm that gets all this, right? So I'll usually work with that person and kind of help get things moving along. But it hasn't trickled down yet. You're right. I haven't seen it trickling down to everyone. I think where everything is going to go is I think at the end of the day, partnerships between the marketing company and the PIM system, which is really where I think this field is going, right? So I'm trying to get Rhapsody right now to, yes, they can identify how much that the clients that they're coming through, where we're getting the clients from. What we're not able to do yet is we're able to figure out the spend. So if we can actually query back into Google through the PIM system, and the PIM system can connect directly with Google, then the PIM system can actually identify the client through the life cycle that comes in. And the PIM system can do all this and identify the spend, the cost per acquisition. It requires the PIM system to be innovative. So currently, working directly, I've worked with Sam on some similar type of stuff, and I'm working with Rhapsody right now on similar type of stuff. I think that's what has to happen is I think the PIM system has to make this next step over because ultimately they house the data, They house the client data, the appointment data, and the spin data, a couple extra steps, and they can bring this down to the 1, 2, 3, or 4 location practitioner.
Excellent. Well, I don't want to disappoint you guys, but I think we're running out of time. There's 2 questions that we ask at the end of the show usually. One of them is there a book, a TED Talk, a video, or something that inspired you recently that you would recommend to our listeners?
Yes, I'm going to say 2 things. So I love EOS and traction. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but I also like Elon Musk's TED Talk on evolution. I really like that bigger picture stuff. So even though I'm philosophical and like Elon Musk, I like EOS and traction are really about integrating and getting down and doing hard work. Those 2 things really define me well.
That's awesome. And then the other thing that we usually ask, do you know anybody in the industry that we should interview? And it would be a good show as well.
I think you guys should interview Tim, the founder of EasyVet. I mean, the fastest growing walk-in concept right now.
Okay.
Disruptor. He's not a vet. He's an innovator, and he comes from the franchising space, 100-unit franchising space. He's got some really big things planned for this industry.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.